With Fragpunk's release on March 6th, there are 13 Lancers to choose from, and while they're all able to be unlocked entirely for free, this guide will help you figure out which ones to unlock first and help you figure out which Lancer suits your playstyle best. I'm not only going to tell you what their abilities do, but I'm also going to give you tips and tricks for each ability to get the most out of the entire kit that's available to you. You're going to want to know as much as you can if you want to climb the ranks fast in Fragpunk, so now's the time to like and subscribe if you want to see more Fragpunk content. I'm going to be spending a ton of time with the top 500 players on the leaderboard so that you can learn from the best. Also, the amazing folks at Bad Guitar Studios were kind enough to give me 5 Pioneer Bundle keys to give away to my subscribers. The giveaway is running right now on my Discord server linked below. We have dedicated channels for Fragpunk and Marvel Rivals, and pretty soon the LFG is going to be super active. So be sure to join the server and enter the giveaway for your chance to win. With all that out of the way, let's get started. If you played in the beta test, then you'll already be familiar with most of the Lancers in the lineup, but the newest Lancer available on release is Chum, a stone robot with his anglerfish friend. We'll get to him soon, but first, let's talk about the starting lineup. There's going to be timestamps for every Lancer, so feel free to jump around if you're looking for tips on anyone specific. Broker is the poster boy of Fragpunk, and his kit works well as the basic character if all you want to do is focus on your gunplay and get yourself out of a tight spot. His first ability, Goddard's Vengeance, is a rocket launcher capable of sending both instant death and flashbacks of a Raze ult into any enemy or unchecked corner that gets in your way. You get 2 shots every round, so go crazy. His smokestack lightning ability creates a wall of smoke in a line starting from where you throw it. If you throw it on the ground, it'll bounce ahead to give you some more distance. His last ability is the cherry bomb, which creates a circle of proximity mines that will explode when people get close. Now, here's some tips for Broker.
Remember, switching to your pistol is always faster than reloading.
While that is still true in Fragpunk, switching to Goddard's Vengeance is even faster than switching to your pistol. So if you're getting pushed by an enemy, chances are you can get a rocket at your feet and take the scorched earth approach before the other guy knows what happened. Now, I said at your feet, and that's because while the rocket launcher is fast to equip and fire, the rocket itself travels pretty slowly. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to clear a corner from a distance. For his smoke, remember that it's a wall of smoke, and it's not an instant deploy. Even if you throw this at the ground, it'll bounce in order to extend the wall, but this might take even longer than if you just threw it max distance. Given the fact that this is a wall of smoke, it's best to use this to get out of sticky situations, but you can also use it to get into them if you want to use it as a 1v1 isolator. If you have 2 enemies holding you down on 2 sides of a lane, throw it down the middle and take your pick. For the cherry bomb, if you're on defense, use this to hold your flank. These cherry bombs can be shot and cleared by enemies, so they work best as warning signs than anything else. On attack, save these for post plant and make it harder for enemies to push sight. Overall, he has just enough kit to keep you occupied, but for me, I think I need a little bit more active util. Nitro is the poster girl of Fragpunk, and her kit is really well suited for people who are terrified to swing their own corners. Chug is a combat drone that you control remotely, and you can even use it to kill enemies, dealing 20 damage per shot. Her second ability, the wall, is a wall. Then you've got Mr. Pew Pew, which is an auto-firing sentry turret that can be super annoying to deal with if it's placed correctly. 20 damage per projectile might not be enough to solo the enemy team, but it is enough damage to make it hard to ignore. The best way to use Chug is to have the drone enter just before your team does, and pull enemy crosshairs away from your teammates. The first shots should go toward the enemies to make sure they notice you, but also try to prioritize shooting enemy utility you see on the ground. Turrets, mines, gadgets, etc., so that your teammates can focus on the fight. The wall is super situational, and this is clearly better on defense, but you can also use it to build platforms to see over cover and create some unique angles. As for Mr. Pew Pew, it's definitely better to hide this above doorways or around tight angles so that enemies have to overextend in order to deal with it. You can also use it as a sound cue if you're holding a room to know that as soon as you hear the turret go off, you can pre-fire whatever doorway or angle you're swinging. Hollowpoint is definitely going to be a favorite of anybody who's good with a sniper. Meteora, aka One Last Kiss, is a single-shot sniper that not only has one-shot potential when fully charged, but it also reveals enemies who are caught in its scope. The smoke screen is a 2D hologram that blocks vision and travels in a straight line from where you shoot it. It moves through terrain and highlights enemies who touch it. Paparazzi is a deployable trap that tags enemies that walk into its radius. The tag also needs to be removed manually, but be warned, this is a very loud trap, and if your enemies don't see it coming, they will hear it coming. Now for Hollowpoint, the sniper itself is pretty self-explanatory, and it's just as strong as it sounds, with tons of players in the top 500 in the beta making really good use of it. The smoke screen might take some getting used to at first since it follows a straight line from where you fire it, so if you're aiming up a little bit, that could mean that your feet get exposed before you see your target. I recommend using it to push back enemies who might be moving down a long corridor, or throw it through walls to see if you can reveal someone trying to be sneaky behind cover. On attack, the paparazzi ability is really useful in post-plant situations, hiding it where enemies who go to defuse will get detected and revealed. Throw your smoke screen and enjoy the free wall hacks. Jaguar is honestly one of the lancers that might take the longest to get used to, but once you learn how to make the most of his kit, he is incredibly rewarding. All of his abilities are interconnected under his passive, Hunter's Last Gift, which detects enemies. Livewire is a shock trap that deals a ton of damage while also slowing enemies and marking them with his passive. Electric Avenue sends a pulse forward that puts 4 smoke walls around enemies in the path of the pulse. These electric cages not only give Jaguar a playground to fight in, but because the enemies inside the cage are tagged with Hunter's Last Gift, you can use his ability I Can See for Miles to see any enemies tagged with Hunter's Last Gift through walls. Now, while you can use I Can See for Miles to detect enemies on their own, it's best to save this ability to pair it with Electric Avenue so that you can guarantee wall hacks on anyone that you hit with your smoke cages. Otherwise, his Electric Avenue ability is still really good for making sure that you not only smoke off enemies who might be pushing or holding an area, but you know exactly where those enemies were standing when the cages drop. Of course, they can leave, and if you get hit by this ability, you should too, but that's why pairing it with I Can See for Miles will give you the upper hand. Because even if they leave the cages, they're still marked, giving you the chance to push up to the cage and peek out of it against any retreating enemy. Similarly, with Livewire, if you place your trap behind you and it hits an enemy, feel free to pop I Can See for Miles to get the wall hack effect on anyone that the Livewire hit. You only get 2 uses of the I Can See for Miles ability, so using it to just detect enemies instead of making the most of your passive would be kind of a waste. As a bonus, I Can See for Miles tells you exactly how many enemies are nearby, even if they aren't marked by your passive. So if you only see wall hacks on 1 enemy and it only says 1 enemy detected, you can swing a lot more confidently. If it says 5 detected, your call. Chum is the newest Lancer. He's a stone robot with a mechanical pet anglerfish and a really unique kit. Alongside Chomper, you have explosive mines and smoke grenades. Self-explanatory. You can deploy Chomper by himself, where he'll guard an area and chomp at the ankles of any enemies that walk near him. Or, if you hold to deploy, you can control where he goes, sending him down a hallway or otherwise into harm's way. What makes Chum super unique is that you can feed Chomper one of your mines or one of your smoke grenades to modify the robofish. If you feed him a mine, he'll explode on contact instead of just biting. If you feed him a smoke grenade, the smoke actually follows where Chomper goes, making it hard for the enemies that he's biting to see, or making it easier for you to drive a smoke wherever you want. Chomper has a pretty quick cooldown, returning to your pockets after just 35 seconds. I recommend using Chomper as soon as the round starts to send him down a corridor with a mine or a smoke to either open up a lucky kill or sabotage an enemy push. That way, you're guaranteed to have Chomper back again by the time post-plant rolls around. If you like to play fast and aggro, then pay attention to Corona. Corona is a top 3 Lancer for me simply because of how powerful and simple his abilities are. Fast Lane is a short dash that can also be used as a super jump. Ashes to Ashes is a projectile that drops an AoE effect called Warzone where it lands. Warzone lasts for 10 seconds, and inside of the AoE, you have damage reduction and a speed boost, and your enemies take a small amount of damage over time. Hothead is a timed flash that comes off of Corona's face, and any enemies that are looking at Corona will get flashed. Very similar to Jaguar, Corona is best suited to use all of his abilities at the same time, but in 2 different distinct combos. For combo number 1, use Hothead and Fast Lane together to wide swing an angle with the dash, timing it to where the flash deploys midway through the dash rather than after you land. This makes sure that enemies have a hard time tracking you and ensures that you'll take the fight in an off angle away from where enemies with good crosshair placement might be waiting. For combo number 2, throw Warzone on the ground at a contested doorway or corner and use Hothead to peek it with your speed boost to make sure that you have every advantage in the fight. Save your dash to get out rather than to rush in. Remember that your enemies also all have abilities, so using 2 out of 3 of your abilities to get in and 1 to get out is going to put you at the best odds every time. Serket probably has the most misunderstood kit of all time, but once you learn to use her efficiently, she will become a favorite. With Station to Station, Serket places a beacon that you can teleport to. While in this beacon, enemies will appear as mini tornadoes, so you can see where enemies might be behind a corner. Keep in mind that when you're using this ability, you can still die if they shoot your body where you initially casted the ability from, or they can cancel the ability if they shoot your statue while you're moving around. This is still super useful to get behind enemies who aren't paying attention, or to quickly reposition in a fight. Gold Dust Woman is a slow-moving tornado that blinds and slows enemies who get caught in it, and Dilemma is a projectile that pulls enemies toward the center. Enemies who are paying attention will be able to see you while you're controlling the teleport, but if you hide it inside of a tornado, then you'll have a much better time setting up for aggressive teleport plays. Or you can use it to bait enemies into weird situations like this clip from my friend Pixie. Dilemma is very situational, but use this in conjunction with your teammates' abilities, or if you're on attack, use it to pull enemies off the diffuser, similar to Astra in Valorant. If you've played Apex, then you'll really like Pathojen. Unfortunately, Pathojen is French, but if you can move past that, you'll see that her kit is probably one of the most useful in the game. Emotional Rescue is a projectile that drops a 15-second healing AoE where you or your teammates can slowly regen HP. Shroom Wall is a wall that isn't that different from Nitro's, except that it's more vertical than it is horizontal, and it can also be used in doorways to block off the entire door. You get 2 of these, and if you recall the wall, you can actually use it again. Otherwise, it can be shot down pretty easily. Killer Queen is a trap that deals poison damage over time, and unlike most traps in this game, it doesn't make noise and it's pretty easily hidden. Pathogen's passive makes her immune to poison damage though, so keep that in mind if you come across another enemy Pathogen or if there are any shard cards that create poison damage in some way. Shroom Wall is really underrated, mostly because a lot of people won't use its recall properly. Pathogen is really well suited for holding or taking space in the middle of the map or in a crossroads. Use her wall to block off 2 doorways so that you can focus on one. And if you have to switch which door you're holding, recall one of the walls to replace the cover where you need it. Being in the center of the map also means that you can hide your traps in high traffic areas and be closer to your whole team if you need to rotate to give heals. Zephyr is another character that can really make use of her entire kit all at once. Midnight Rambler cycles through full and partial invisibility with your knife, and when the bar passes through the white sections, you'll only be partially invisible. So be careful when using this ability outside of Fade Away. Also, you're invisible, not silent. So make sure to walk or crouch to hide your footsteps. Fade Away marks an area for 15 seconds that allows you to be fully invisible while using Midnight Rambler and while stabbing. Get Back is a dagger beacon that allows you to teleport back to where you placed it. Both placing and teleporting does not interrupt your Midnight Rambler skill, so keep that in mind. It's best to use Zephyr as an ambush character. Set a teleport beacon in safety, then use your Midnight Rambler to sneak up close to enemies, then drop Fade Away in an area that the enemies are already holding. And try to go for some knife kills before teleporting away. If you don't want to get that aggressive with her, you can use her Fade Away in the middle of a map to peek down a few angles and pathways to try to get info for your team. Or use it to lock down an angle, as enemies are very unlikely to push through this while it's active. Just always remember that you can TP to get out of the situation in case it goes south. Spider is another top 3 Lancer for me for his kit. Any Valorant players who enjoy Yoru will feel at home here. You can place 2 interconnected teleporters on the map that you can recall remotely. Spirited Away is a thrown teleport trap that will TP any characters in range to the point where it was thrown from. And Spiderweb is a trap that blinds and slows enemies that walk through it. For Spider's TP, there's a few different ways that you can play them. On defense, put one near both bomb sites to make rotations faster for your team. Another way that you can set them up is to place one in a spot that you want to come back to and carry the other one with you so that you can TP back at any time. Remember that you can recall the TPs. So if you sneak up pretty decently into enemy territory, think about hiding your TP, return to spawn, and recall the one that you just came out of. That way, when the time is right, you can TP back to wherever you got to in your first push. The possibilities are endless. His Spirited Away teleports teammates as well as enemies, so if you aren't finding good use kidnapping enemies, you could use it to relocate teammates who might be stuck in sticky situations. Or just troll them with it, your call. Kismet is a really great choice for the sweaty streamer type, which is why you'll probably see her played a lot in the higher ranks. Hello Goodbye is a big orb scan that reveals any enemies caught inside it. Misery Angel is a grenade that damages any enemies in its range, even through walls. As long as the enemy is inside of the circle, they will take damage. Walk on the Wild Side is high risk, high reward. You enter a different dimension, making you both invisible and immune to damage, but you can't see any enemies or teammates in the rift. So when you come out the other side, there's no way to prepare for what may be there. Hello Goodbye is the most powerful scan in the game in my opinion, and you can deploy it through walls as it drops a fixed distance from where you cast it. So get creative with your deployment. I don't recommend using the Rift Walk into unknown territory, since when you come out of the ability, you still have to pull out your weapon. Instead, use it to change what cover you're behind or to leave the room and end up behind the enemies that are challenging you. You can also throw Misery Angel before you use the Rift Walk so that you have at least one angle cleared for when you come out the other side. Axon is my favorite Lancer by far, mostly because of his passive Dark Slide, allowing him to slide everywhere all the time. His main ability is an electric guitar that doubles as a shotgun, and this thing melts enemies. His next ability is Sticky Fingers, which are sticky explosive grenades that bounce on surfaces but stick to enemies. You get 12 of these and you can just keep throwing them. When you're using his guitar, if you right click, it throws 2 of these at once. His last ability is Super Freak, which is basically Warden from R6, making Axon immune to any vision effects. His shotgun is the best in the game by far, so when you're using Axon, don't worry too much about your other primary weapon. When you're using Axon, I also recommend using the flasher as a secondary weapon. Throw a flashbang and slide around a corner with Super Freak active to turn yourself into a punk rock version of Corona. Your sticky grenades respawn really quickly, so use these super liberally, especially when you have the guitar out and you can throw 2 at a time. The grenades are enough to force people out of corners, allowing you to slide into them to close the distance for your guitar shotgun. And finally, we have Sonar, a streamer from somewhere underwater. And while you won't find Sonar streams on Twitch, you will find mine, so definitely be sure to follow over there if you haven't already. Sonar's kit revolves around sound, which makes sense given her supersonic hearing. Echolocation is a device that pings periodically that reveals any enemies that are moving when the ring passes over them. Sonic Surge throws a projectile forward that exposes all enemies that it hits, as well as dropping a wave that knocks back, dazes, and further exposes any enemies in range. Sound of Silence is a super powerful ability that dampens the footsteps of Sonar and surrounding teammates, as well as giving immunity to enemy echolocation devices should you encounter an enemy Sonar on the other team. Sound of Silence is super useful in its own right, but combine it with your teammates for even better utility, especially if you have a Zephyr on your team. Echolocation only reveals moving enemies, so try to place it in areas where enemies need to push, or use your Sonic Surge to force enemies to move. Axon is a really good Lancer to pair with as well, since with 12 sticky grenades, people will be moving quite a lot. Sonar is really good at ambushing if you play her just right, especially if you can put down echolocation in one area and use Sound of Silence to relocate quickly without making any noise somewhere else. So in summary, you can think of the Lancers in 3 distinct groups. The best all-rounders are Broker, Hollowpoint, Serket, and Pathojen. Broker if you want to focus on your guns and have a smoke to get out quick, mines to cover your back, and a rocket to easily finish the job. Hollowpoint if you want to lock down a lane, focus on sniping, and have a quick smoke ability for tight spots. Serket if you want to be aggro or reposition safely with both offensive and defensive throwables, and Pathojen to be able to quickly take cover, heal up your friends, and place traps where you need them. The best aggressive Lancers are Axon, Jaguar, Corona, and Kismet. Axon to quickly slide into action and have the most powerful shotgun in the game. Jaguar to quickly engage enemies in advantageous fights, timing his I can see for miles just right. Corona to use his entire kit for extremely aggro engagements, high risk, high reward, and basically guaranteed flashes. And Kismet for the insanely good reveal, the really oppressive opportunities from Misery Angel, and the get out of jail free card with Walk on the Wild Side. And the best defensive Lancers are Nitro, Chum, Zephyr, Spider, and Sonar. Nitro for being able to scout safely with Chug Chug, Mr. Pew Pew to lock down any angles you want to watch, and the Wall to create your own angles. Chum for having his ankle-biting fish friend and being able to deploy mines and smokes to keep an angle in check or feed him to the fish for guaranteed kills. Zephyr to make it incredibly stressful for enemies to push past and to get into hard-to-reach spots via your invisibility and TPs. Spider for fast rotations and sneaky trap plays, setting your team up to quickly be anywhere on the map at once, along with blinding traps to really hold an area. And Sonar for the ability to sense moving enemies, displace camping enemies, and silent step to quickly reposition anywhere without the enemies finding out. Not only that, but Bad Guitar Studios have announced that there will be 2 new Lancers added every season. That's a new Lancer every 2 months to keep things fresh. So, who's gonna be your main when Fragpunk drops on March 6th? And do you have any tips? If so, leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I'll be streaming Fragpunk every week on Twitch, linked below. Thanks so much for watching, and there's a lot more Fragpunk content on the way, so don't worry, you'll see me around.